Hey family, my name is Amanda Brown. I'm a grateful alcoholic. And by the grace of God, I'm sober today. My sobriety date is May 19th, 1991. I'm very grateful to have over 34 years sober. My home group is the Legacies group in Montgomery, Alabama. I'm also have an online home group, the Back Porch International Group. It meets every day at 11 o'clock Central Time. I have a wonderful sponsor, the fabulous Rena Kay, with over 49 years sober in Punta Gorda, Florida. And I work with alcoholics. Thank you for an absolutely fantabulous weekend. Thank you, Ann, for bringing all of us together. I have no doubt that God absolutely used you to orchestrate this weekend and to line up the speakers in the way that God laid on your heart. Thank you for being a vessel. Thank you for allowing me to be of service this weekend, and thank you for helping all of us have the opportunity to be together this weekend. Thank you so much for being God's agent. Thank you. I love you. Thank you to Veronica, the taper. Thank you so much for your service this weekend. Thank you. Thank you to all the speakers, and I'll get to that in just a minute. And thank you, Katie, for being a fabulous voice. Thank you. Stand up. Y'all stand up and give her a big hand. Amazing. Y'all don't know how hard y'all are to round up. Look, a minute ago, I was over here telling her, Katie, get him in here. Katie, get him in here. Katie, me and God are ready. Katie, tell him 2 minutes. Don't tell him 5 minutes. Get him in here already. Literally. So she was trying to round y'all in here, right? Because me and God got stuff to do. Let's go. So not only is she having to deal with y'all, she's having to deal with people like me up here on the stage, right? It is a gift, it's a talent, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for a fantastic weekend. Okay. I am grateful. I'm grateful this morning for this hotel letting us be here. I'm grateful this morning that I knew the name of the man in bed with me. His whole name. I have his passwords. I'm grateful that my room key allowed me into that beautiful room. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with all of you this weekend. I'm grateful for electricity. I'm grateful for this beautiful room with all the sparkles and the jewels. It just reminds me about the sunlight of the Spirit. And I'm grateful for the chairs that we get to sit in, and that they weren't those hard folding aluminum chairs, right? That we had a little cushion for a hiney, right? I'm grateful for getting to hear a baby this weekend, because I remember that was me when I was nursing mine, and I would sit in the little room over here and crack the door so that I could just get a little bit of the meeting that was going on in there this weekend, right? I'm so grateful for elevators that I didn't have to go up and down all them stairs, because I can't be doing stairs right now, right? I'm so grateful that we had a 10-minute break so I could run upstairs and pee and pray and change shoes and come back down that elevator, right? I'm so grateful for Bill and Bob. I'm so grateful for Ann and Lois. I'm so grateful that God laid on Bill's heart, hey, buddy, why don't you sit down at a desk and write all this down? I'm so grateful for that divine inspiration. I'm so grateful that he thought to sit down, pen to paper, and write out the 12 steps, because they started out as 6. But God, the divine spirit, the spark, the creator, whatever you want to call it, inspired him to turn it into 12. I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that he was sober enough to hear that nudge, to feel that nudge, for that to happen the way it did. I start my day every morning with a gratitude list. My first words is, thank you, God, for giving me another day. Thank you, God, for my sobriety. God, please keep me sober today. God, what are you up to today, and how can I be a part of it? Step 12. My mentor, Diz Titcher, told me this years ago. He said, Amanda, you know, we hear all the time that you got to give it away to keep it. He said, that's not it. You got to give it away to get it. And that has been my experience. So in step 1, I shared that I was powerless over alcohol, and how that alcohol had made my life unmanageable, and maybe a little bit about how to use that in our everyday life, right? What are we powerless over today? What are we allowing to make our life unmanageable today? And then in step 2, talked about coming to believe. Do an exercise, do something, get a concept that you can work with, that you can come to believe, that you're then willing to turn yourself and abandon yourself to in step 3, right? And in step 3, we heard Terry talking about making that decision and how important that decision was, and that this is the triumphant arc through which we walk to freedom. Then we get to step 4, and we heard Josephine. We got to see the wonderful inventory, and she shared with her experience with us about how she does that inventory and how depth she gets, and that we really only have 2 options. It's either God or whiskey. In step 5, we get Lizzie, and what a powerful story from Lizzie. And she talked about how just telling a human is not enough. She told a human it wasn't enough. She went back out. What she learned the second time was that God had to be a part of that. God has to be a part of our 5th step. There's 3 parts to that, right? In step 6 and 7, we listened to beautiful April, and she talked about that the character defects are what I do when I don't trust God with whatever is going on in my life. Wow. Thank you for that. In step 8 and 9, Pam talked about that this step is about having the best possible relationship with every human being. And then she shared with her about making an amends just on Friday morning before she got here, right? In step 10, we just heard Terry share about that all of that pain, if we will continue to do this work, that this is a lifelong process, and all of that pain can be turned into gold if we'll let our higher power transform us through the work, right? And in step 11, Terry shared about, God help me, thy will be done. Some of the most powerful prayers right there. God help me, thy will be done. And I will share with you, I have been taking notes, not just throughout the weekend, but at different times when the God of my experience would lay something on my heart. And God has a lot to say today, and I don't know that we're going to get to all of it. Here's what I know. I pee and I pray, and I'm just a willing vessel, and whatever God wants to talk about, that's what we're going to talk about, right? Because what I came to realize is there's 3 parts to that 12 step, right? I could do an hour on each part. I got 37 minutes left. We're not going to get to all of it, right? So I very rarely take notes, but I did because I know that God wants me to look at and talk about some of this stuff, okay? So that's what you see me looking at this morning. So, having had a spiritual awakening as the result, not a result. A result implies there's more than one. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these 12 steps, right? Did I have this spiritual awakening? Absolutely. What does that look like for me? I had that psychic change. I was transformed. And look, we didn't do this. God help y'all. I don't know who came up with the 1 step a month club. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I don't want you to die. I did all 12 steps in 21 days. Let's go. And the only reason why it was 21 days is because my sponsor had a little vacation in there, so she gave me that extra time to finish the 4th step. That's the only reason why it was 21 days, right? I want to talk real quick about sponsor before we get into that and where that term came from. Back in the day when it was Bill and Bob and all of them, what that would look like was they would get you at the bar or get a 12-step call, and they would go and get you. And they would bring you into their home for a weekend. And you do all 12 steps in that weekend, and then they take you to your first meeting. And the only way you could get to that meeting was if somebody sponsored you in. I've seen the ledgers. And up here it says the member's name, or it says the visitor's name. And if you're a visitor, over here it says sponsored by. You couldn't just walk in, right? Thank goodness we don't have to go through that today, right? But that's how quickly. Look, 4th step can be one question. Oh my God, I don't want to get on a soapbox. I could, but I don't want you to die. Okay, so we're in here, we're getting the work, we're getting the 12 steps in. Let's go. And you ain't got to wait till all your amends are done before you started on 10. Who started that mess? You do not have to wait. Now, I immediately started my amends, and then I started a 10-step practice, right? Okay. I was no longer the woman that I was when I came in that door. Now, I still might look like the woman I was when I came in the door, right? Because it's a process. Look, I would come in looking like a hoochie mama, and my sponsor would take one look at me, and she'd be like, oh, no, ma'am, go try again, right? Because I would come in, and all my stuff's hanging out, right? It got to where she just kept closing the car because she never knew what I was going to come in dressing like, right? And she'd say, Amanda, do you want to be the reason why that young man next to you doesn't hear what he needs to hear that's going to save his life? Do you want to be that distraction? Well, no, ma'am. Well, go put some clothes on. Right? I was no longer the same woman. I did not want to be that woman anymore. I wanted to be somebody different. Right? Because by then, I have enough information. I had my first spiritual experience doing that 5th step. Well, that was the first time I felt unconditional love in my life since my big mama had died. I wanted things to be different. I was feeling a little better. I'm no longer the same woman I was when I went in that facility, right? Spiritual awakening. Not to be confused with spiritual experience. I have lots of spiritual experiences. I had one with Kimberly and the watch Friday. That was a spiritual experience for me. I had to go write down in the journal, right? But as the result of these 12 steps, I have a spiritual awakening. I am transformed. Then we get to the second part, carry the message. I remember my sponsor telling me one day, she said, Amanda, are you carrying the message or are you carrying a mess? Right? She said, Amanda, you may be the only example of a big book somebody ever gets to see. You going to be a good example or a bad example? Right? So what did some of that look like? Okay, well, let's say the chairperson's up there and they're bringing a topic, right? Do I have experience, strength, and hope with that topic? Have I lived through something similar or how I got through something like that without finding it necessary to take a drink of alcohol? Or am I sitting there whining about my day? What am I carrying? I'm praying. So in that carrying the message, what does that look like before and after the meeting, right? I'm a happily married woman. We've been married over 25 years, and we've been together over 33 years. But maybe I'm standing out there with the girls, and all of a sudden here this sweet young thing comes in wearing a pair of Levi's and some boots. And I'm standing there in the circle with my girl. Do they hear me going, would you look at that? Am I being a sober woman of dignity and grace in that moment? Probably not. Right that minute, I'm being a little horny-toed, right? I mean, okay, so then I go in the meeting, and here she comes. God love her. She knows what time the meeting starts, and it never fails. She's going to come in 20 minutes late, and she's going to clod hop across that meeting all the way over to the coffee pot, interrupting the whole meeting. Then she gets her coffee, and her seat's over here back by the door. So now she's got to clod hop all the way back over here to the door and sit down. Well, I have all of a sudden jumped on my throne of judgment. And I have put my crown of self-righteous indignation on. I'm going to call her sponsor after this meeting, and I'm going to tell her what she did. What am I doing after the meeting? Am I over here with all these girls and I'm talking about clodhopper going back and forth and I'm gossiping about her? She can't do no better. Don't she know what time this meeting starts? I'm over there gossiping about her. She ain't in that circle. That's gossip, right? Well, maybe they're talking about her. And what I know today is if I'm standing there listening, I am participating in that gossip, right? Am I carrying the mess? Am I carrying a message? Because let me tell you something, people. People are always watching. People are always watching. If all of a sudden I'm in the meeting and the cashier at the Winn-Dixie comes in, is she going to take one look at me and turn around and run? Because I gave her what for the other day? Because she wouldn't take my coupons. And so that was, when she sees me, she's like, oh my God, if that's what AA is, I don't want anything to do with that, and turn around and run out the door. Or is she going to come in and see my smiling face because I know her name, because I make a point to know the names of my servers and the people who work for me and the people who do things for me. Hey, Katie, come on in and sit right here. How you doing? How was work today, girl? You working the express lane today? Am I carrying the message? Am I carrying a mess? Right? Okay. What does that service work look like? Right? And this is still part of carrying the message. We have seen a beautiful example of service work in Ann and this weekend, right? How she has got the nudge to put on a conference and got some like-minded women together and said, hey, let's do this. And we are getting to enjoy the fruits of that labor, right? That is a beautiful example of service work, okay? It doesn't have to be that fancy. We've got a lot of elderly, old-timers, elderly newcomers in our programs. Can't I go over here and pick them up and take them to a meeting? Hey, Miss Peggy, I'll be over there in 15 minutes. We're going to meeting. Get your bib on. I mean, that's what somebody did for me. When I first got sober, Mr. Bill Bailey, he would call me up. All right, Miss Amanda, be outside in 15 minutes. Yes, sir. Click. I'd be outside. He had a car we called the Boat. It was this big, long, like Capri Classic thing. I don't know. You could fit 30 people in it. I mean, 4 doors, had them old-timey power locks, still had the ashtrays in the doors. Y'all know what I'm talking about? And you'd get in the car. You just get in the car. You didn't know where you was going. Look, that was back in the day. My home group only had 2 meetings a week. I was living there when we went to 3 meetings a week. Not a day, people. A week. A week. So when we would get in the car with Mr. Bill, we'd be going out of town. We might go to Enterprise, might go to Dothan, might go to Ozark, might go over here to Luverne or wherever. We were going to meetings all over the place, right? He did that for me. Am I doing that for somebody else today? Right? Service work might mean, can I go get somebody some groceries because they can't get out? Can I go over there and mow her grass? Right? Can I lead a meeting on Zoom? Do I see that there's a hole in my clubhouse and we need a meeting here? Can I be the one to help start a meeting over here, right? When I moved to the town that I lived in, I discovered there were no real big book studies. What I mean by that is reading 2 sentences out of a page is not a big book study. Reading 2 sentences and everybody going in a room and sharing is not my experience of a big book study, okay? I got my 1939 dictionary with the book. If it's a real big book study, then I'm going to have the original manuscript over here too, and we're going to compare. Why did they cross that out? Why did they change that? Why was it necessary? Probably got a 12 and 12 over here. Probably have AA Comes of Age, because we may talk about some of the history with it, right? A real big book study. So we started a real big book meeting, me and my little sponsor, little Peggy Purser, right? As a result of that, God laid it on our heart to start having Big Book Comes Alive weekend. So we had different speakers come in that would teach people about the Big Book, how to use the Big Book, how to use the steps in the Big Book, right? I still can't get over that most people don't know about the 2 questions in We Agnostics. How many people in here, raise your hand if you know what I just said? Oh my God. People, if you want to know if somebody's an alcoholic or not, you open up to We Agnostics. In the very first paragraph are the 2 questions to help you determine whether or not you are probably an alcoholic. Homework. Y'all go do that today. That's my suggestion, but go do it. Right? So, things like that. right? How can I be of service? How can I be God's agent? How can I do the footwork today? And here's what I know today. If I'm doing my best, if I'm working this program to the best of my ability and doing my best to live in God's will, then footwork will come. Opportunities will come, right? Sometimes it may look like bringing somebody the message you didn't know, right? Now, we used to do 12-step calls. Y'all don't really do that much anymore. I don't know that many people in this room know how to do that. But we used to really do 12-step calls. And we knew things like, you never go do it alone. We always had a bottle of whiskey or some beer in the trunk because we knew we were going to have to give it to them so that we could get them to we didn't have detoxes, so that we could get them to the hospitals or wherever we were taking them, right? And how to do that, right? And different safety measures to take when you're going in, because look, y'all, I walked in on somebody being so drunk, they were standing there naked with a shotgun. And we don't want to get shot. We got called from their wife to come over here and help, right? Or their husband to come over here and help, right? So there are things you have to do with that, right? Sometimes what that looks like is somebody's name being laid on your heart. And that was my experience. God began to lay the name of my father on my heart, Slim. And so at 3.5 years sober, I knew I was going to have to go see him. And I didn't grow up with my real father. That's a whole story. You have to go listen to it somewhere else. And when I did meet him, it was terrifying. And he was a big 6'5", 300-something pound drug addict, alcoholic biker who used to beat my mama, right? And I didn't have a relationship with him. But here at 3.5 years sober, God began to lay his name on my heart, and I knew I was going to have to go talk to Slim. So I was obedient to that nudge. And I drove to Tennessee, and he's there at his mama's house, and he had not had anything to drink or use that day. So we began to walk that property and start having a conversation. And the only way I know how to explain it is I began to have an out-of-body experience. Because I began to tell this 6'5", 350-pound man with a beard down to his belly button and hair down to his butt, and it's covered in tattoos and it's covered up in leathers and chains, what I was like and what happened and what my life was like today. And I didn't know what was going to come out of that. I just knew I was supposed to do it. And at the end of it, I'm crying, he's crying, we hug each other, I tell him I love him, and I leave. And it wasn't long after that he called my mother and said, I'm coming to Dothan, and we knew what that meant. And as a result of that, he went to treatment for 30 days. And when he came out of treatment, I said, Slim, why now? Because he had tried several times to stop drinking before. He almost died 5 different times from being in jail and prison, and he went into the DTs, right? So I said, Slim, why now? He said, Amanda, when we were on that hillside and you were sharing with me what you were like and what happened and what your life was like today, I could no longer deny who and what I was. And y'all, as a result of that conversation, my father passed away with over 26 years sober. That story is not about me. That story is about how the God of our experience can use us if we will stay ready. If we will stay ready. Even at the end of Slim's life, God was still using him as the hospice nurses were coming in. I'll tell you 2 real quick stories about that. And the nurses were coming in, and they saw his big book and my big book and the 12 and 12s on the table and the AA literature. And one young hospice nurse came in, and she saw that literature and started asking Slim questions. Excuse me. So he started sharing with her his story, right? And so as a result of that conversation, she started sharing with him about this boyfriend that she'd been with for years, and she was terrified that he might be an alcoholic because of all of his drinking. And as a result of that conversation, she is now an outstanding member of Al-Anon there in the Tampa area, right? One day another hospice nurse came in, and she saw the literature, and the same thing starts happening, and she starts talking to Slim, and Slim starts sharing his story with her, and come to find out, she'd been sober over 27 years, but she'd stopped going to AA around year 20. And as a result of that conversation, she is now an outstanding member of the AA community in the Tampa area, right? That's how the God of our experience can use us if we will remain a willing vessel, right? Okay. Still in carrying the message. I take that responsibility statement seriously. When anyone anywhere reaches out for help, I want my hand to be there. And for that, I am responsible, right? When I see somebody new coming in the meeting, I'm not handing them a business card and asking them to call me. I'm putting my number in their phone, and then I'm getting their number. And I'm going to call them the next day. Hey, you want to go to a meeting? Hey, did you go to a meeting last night? Hey, you want to go to Waffle House and get some grub before the meeting? Hey, you want to go to Dairy Queen? Why aren't I reaching out? When did we start with that? Oh, I'm supposed to go to 6 meetings and find somebody with what I want. Gloria told me she was my sponsor. I didn't have to ask her. Why in the world do we have the unrealistic expectation that this newcomer who just came in here, shaking like a tree in a hurricane, is going to have the courage to pick up the phone, dial those digits, and ask me a question? I know I was not capable of doing that. Maybe you were. Good for you. That was not my experience. So I don't have that expectation of these new people coming in. Why would I do that to them? And why in the world do we tell, oh my God, I cannot stand this. Why in the world do we tell a newcomer, you're the most important person in the room? No, they're not. No, they're not. Somebody had to be there to get the facility. Somebody had to be there and unlock the door. Somebody had to be there and make the coffee. Why would you put that amount of pressure on that new person? Look, I told y'all, I was hiding in the back of the room. If you had made me the center of attention and said that to me, I would have run and probably died. Please don't do that to me. Please don't do that to them. Right? I'm going to say this too. I was taught that once that Serenity prayer starts, you are not to move. I don't know when it became to be okay to get up and go pee. You hold it. You pee before you sit down. Be responsible. When it became okay to get up and get a coffee. No, ma'am. No. Sit down. Sit down. There are different parts and times in our lives where we are able to sit down for at least 40 minutes. Okay? Sit down. Sit down. That urge to pee is not the urge to pee. That's the Spirit nudging you on something, and you don't want to hear it, and it's making you uncomfortable, so you want to get up and move, and that's not, that point is for you to be still and feel it. Right? Make note of what that is making you uncomfortable and talk to your sponsor about it afterwards. Okay? All right. I think that's all my soapboxes. I didn't know all that was coming out. Okay. Just a few more things on carrying the message. Oh, my goodness. We got to hurry this up, God. One of the reasons why I say work with alcoholics, because in the book it says work with alcoholics. That's what it says. Okay? I don't just work with women who have asked me to sponsor them. Okay? I am responsible. When anyone anywhere reaches out for help, I want my hand to be there. Right? There may be things, experiences that some of the people I'm working with are going through, or even if they're my sponsors, one of my sponsees that I may not have experience with. Well, then I'm going to give them a name and number of somebody to call who can help them with that. Right? So I do get phone calls from people like April, right? Because her sponsor doesn't necessarily have some of the experiences that I have. I know her sponsor. Her sponsor knows that I know her and that she's her sponsor, right? We're a family unit over here. So it was absolutely hunky-dory for her sponsor to say, hey, why don't you call Amanda Brown in Alabama and talk to her about this, right? And so we worked through some of that. I have women all over the country who do that. I have women, I'm on their 10-step list. If they can't get their sponsor on the phone, they can call me. I have women that, I have one in Texas. God knows I love her. And she'll call me and she say, Amanda, I just did this 4th step, But I feel like there's more, and I know you can get it out of me. Can you help me with this? I'm like, absolutely, right? Because her and her sponsor did it, and it was like 2 pages, and we get done, and it's 7.5, right? Because we're getting to the root. We're getting there. We're taking care of it, right? So that's one of the reasons why I say work with alcoholics. Okay. Practice these principles in all my affairs. We've talked a little bit about that. One of my favorite examples is, let's say I've got a car full of women and we're going to Girl Stock in Atlanta, right? And here is a slow driver in the left lane on the interstate, and I cannot get around them. Does this car full of women hear me cussing and fussing and throwing up some sign language? Or do they hear me saying, ladies, y'all come on. We got to pray for this guy right here. God bless you. I hope you get to where you're going safely. Right? Because I'm either a good example or a bad example. Am I practicing principles in all my affairs? Right? Okay. So let's say I'm in the Winn-Dixie and I've asked my sweet, bless his heart, little earthy husband to go over there and get me a can of French cut green beans. And he comes back with a can that says Italian cut green beans. Now, I have a choice in that moment, right? In that pause, postpone action until Serenity enters. Don't choke him out right here in the middle of the Winn-Dixie. Don't call him names. Don't call him stupid. Don't ask him, can't you read? Don't ream him a new one. Don't choke him out. Just, oh, honey, thank you so much. See right here it says Italian. I'd really like the one that says French cut. Could you maybe go do that? And I'm going to go over here and get the cantaloupe or whatever, right? Because unbeknownst to me, there's a woman in AA 1 aisle over, and she's about to come around that corner, right? Somebody's always watching. Am I practicing these principles in all my affairs? What does that look like in my daily life? I will tell you that my children may not have worked the way we work at the 12-step program, but they have grown up with the 12-step program all of their life. They've done little inventories. They didn't know what that was, right? They wrote out their prayers. I taught them the 3rd-step prayer. My daughter still uses it today, right? I don't know about my son. Boys are different. Anyway. I know he has a relationship. Anyway, boys are different. But, we use that in our daily life, right? Now, let me tell you when I was a bad example. Baseball game. My son is the all-star left-handed pitcher, can bat ambidextrous, and also plays first base, and he is pitching. And I don't agree with the umpire on some of these calls. And at the time, I would sit right behind home plate, right? All my team people and parents can see me. All the visitors, people and parents can see me. I am right here. And y'all, I'm loud on a bad day. I'm loud on a good day. I'm loud. Well, let me tell you, when I get upset and Mama Bear syndrome goes into effect, the entire park can hear me. You're blind as a bat. You need somebody. Whatever was coming out of my mouth, right? And I had been warned by the umpire. And the last thing was, he stood up, he took that mask off, and he turned around and looked at me. Ma'am, one more outburst from you, and I will have you escorted out of the park. Not the game, the park. Clearly, I was not being a good example, right? So after that day, I changed my behavior, and I got to where I just had to go behind the bleachers and peek through the bleacher slats. Because that's the only way I would not open my mouth, right? And I still wanted to be able to see, right? And I made amends to my son after that incident, because that's not the sober woman of dignity and grace that I had been raised to be, right? Clearly I was spiritually unfit. Clearly there was stuff going on with me. Clearly I did a 4-step on that, right, with my sponsor and worked through that. But I had to change some of that behavior, right? So am I practicing these principles in all my affairs? Okay. Oh, Lord, yeah, that was an opportunity. Okay, another example. Oh, dear Lord. Okay, so it's a whole story, and anyway, my peepaw, Meemaw and Peepaw were my grandparents that helped raise me. And my peepaw had an affair with my Meemaw's married best friend, who divorced her husband and married my peepaw, and they built a house across the pond that my Meemaw could see out her kitchen window the rest of her natural life. So when my peepaw died, that woman was in charge of his funeral. So that woman, when we got to the funeral home, had the funeral home director, who we knew, it's a small town, we've known them all our life, shared with my mother and I and my uncle that we were not going to be allowed to sit with family. I had a choice in that moment. I am pausing, and I had not forgiven her yet. I didn't forgive her till I was 8 years sober. I am pausing, I am praying, I'm watching my mama, because I know that there is no way in hell they would be able to contain the fury that she and I would unleash in that building if we made the choice to unleash it. It would be stuff of legends. That beast is still inside me. That beast is still inside me. I have a daily reprieve and a lot of duct tape, right? So, thank goodness we'd made the choice that day and prayed enough to know that we were going to be women of dignity and grace, right? And didn't show our butts that day, and we sat out there in the public with people that we'd known all our lives who wrapped us up in love, and it was going to be okay, right? Okay. Even today, my sponsees will tell you, and anybody I'm working with, well, and you've seen me do it right here. Even today, I will pause and pray. Why? Because I'm waiting for my higher power to give me some direction. I'm waiting for my higher power to give me a nudge. I'm waiting for my Creator to give me some inspiration. Because even in this moment, I don't want it to be about me. When I say I pee and pray before I come in here, I'm asking God to help remove my ego. I don't want Amanda Brown, the flesh person, up here sharing with you today, right? I want that God-filled, Spirit-led woman that God has asked me to be and trained me to be and helped me to be. I want to be God's agent. I don't want to be this. Does that make sense? So even when I'm talking on the phone, they'll say, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm praying. Just give me a minute," right? Or sometimes I'll tell them straight up front. I'm looking at them, and I'm going like this, and they'll say, "You're praying, aren't you?" I'm like, yeah. Because I don't want it to be about me, right? So how am I carrying myself in my everyday life? Okay, real quick, I've got something I'm supposed to share with you, and then I'll close with that. Okay, I can do all 12 steps in 15 minutes or less. Let me give you an example. It was right after the fall had happened. It was probably that December or January. And I was in so much pain, and I was laying in the recliner, and I'm talking to Rena on the phone, and I just don't know if I can keep going like this, because this is not the life that I had seen for myself, and I just don't know that I can keep living this way. I really don't. Not being able to take showers, I can't even wipe my own butt, I can't brush my teeth, I can't text, I can't type, I can't do anything but lay here. She said, "Amanda, have you worked the 12 steps on it yet?" And I said, "No, ma'am." She said, "Well, let's do that." "Amanda, are you powerless over your pain today?" "Yes, ma'am, I am." "Are you going to allow it to make your life unmanageable. I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to. How do I get past that? She said, okay, let's go to step 2. Do you believe that God is bigger than your pain? Do you believe that the God of your experience can walk you through this experience and that eventually you will come out on the other side a better and different person? Amanda, do you believe that God is? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I do. Okay, then are you willing to turn your pain over in the 3rd step prayer? Absolutely. God, I offer my pain to thee to deal with it and do with it as thy will. Relieve it of the bondage of self that it may better do thy will. Take away its difficulties, that victory over them may be a witness to those that it would help of thy love, thy power, and thy way of life. May it do thy will always. Okay, Amanda, let's look at 4 and 5. Let's look at and 6 and 7. Let's do a mini 4-step. How are your character defects manifesting? Oh, Rena, I'm being snarky with Gary. I'm not being very appreciative. I'm so tired. All I can think about is self, and I'm sick of thinking about self. I'm not really reaching out to people. I just want to hide. I don't want to answer the phone. I don't want anybody to come over. I don't want anybody to bring a meeting to my house. Can I please just hide in a hole? We worked through all that. We looked at how the character defects were coming out. And then she asked me, she said, okay, do you need to make an amends? Yes, I need to make an amends to my husband today. When we got off the phone, I made that amends. And then at the 10th step, she said, okay, now look, we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be talking about this on a regular basis because we want to stay on top of this, right? And there's lots of stuff we do in the 10th step. And then we get to step 11, and she said, Amanda, are you seeking help with this? Are you seeking ways to improve your conscious contact? Have you asked another woman for experience, strength, and hope? Oh, my God, no. She said, well, you know Georgia B. Georgia B. has suffered with chronic pain all her life. Call her. So I called up Georgia B. after I got off that phone. Why wouldn't I seek out other women with this experience and ask them, how in the world do you get through this? How do you get up in the morning? What do you do with your will to live? What does that look like for you today, right? So it was a new way of seeking. And as a result of all of this, I have grown closer to my higher power. I got some new literature, some different stuff that I could read. And she said, now, Amanda, when you get to step 12, you know what? There's going to come a time when you'll get to share what you're living through. And God can use that to help somebody else. So step 12, you'll be able to share all of this one day. I guess she was right. Here we are, right? All that, less than 15 minutes. I can use that in anything in my life today, no matter who it is, no matter what it is, no matter what the situation is. Now I'm going to close with this, and I have to use my phone because I didn't know I was going to be closing with this, so I'd have brought the piece of paper with it on there, but that's why my phone is out. I don't like phones. Oh, that was a whole nother soapbox. But anyway, we're not going there. What I'm about to read to you is on my phone. That's why I have my phone up. I'm going to have to do it like that. So, step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result, carrying the message, practice these principles in all our affairs. And we're to go out from here to share with others. And I hope you'll go back and share with your home groups and share in your online meetings and share with your sponsees and share with the people you work with every little nugget that you've learned here this weekend. But I want to share with you in final this morning why we were chosen. God in His wisdom has selected this group of men and women to be the purveyors of His goodness. In selecting them through whom to bring about this phenomenon, He went not to the proud, the mighty, the famous, or the brilliant. He went to the humble, to the sick, to the unfortunate. He went to the drunkard, the so-called weakling of the world. Well might that power have said to us, and to your weak and feeble hands I have entrusted a power beyond estimate. To you have been given that which had been denied the most learned of your fellows, not to scientists or statesmen, not to wives or mothers, not even to my priests or ministers, have I given this gift of healing other alcoholics, which I entrust to all of you. It must be used unselfishly. It carries with it grave responsibility. No day can be too hard, no effort too great. It must be used with tolerance, for I have restricted its application to no race, no creed, and no denomination. Personal criticism you must expect. Lack of appreciation will be common. Ridicule will be your lot. Your motives will be misjudged. Success will not always attend your efforts in your work with other alcoholics. You must be prepared for adversity. For what men call adversity is the ladder you must use to ascend the rungs toward spiritual perfection. And remember, in the exercise of this power, I shall not exact of you beyond your capabilities. You are not selected because of exceptional talents. And be careful always, if success attends your efforts, not to ascribe to personal superiority, that to which you can lay claim only by virtue of my gift. If I had wanted learned men and women to accomplish this mission, the power would have been entrusted to the physician and the scientist. If I had wanted eloquent men and women, there would have been many anxious for the assignment. For talk is the easiest used of all talents with which I have endowed mankind. If I had wanted scholarly men and women, the world is filled with better qualified than you would have been available. You were selected because you have been the outcasts of the world. And your long experience as drunkards has made, or should make, you humbly alert to the cries of distress that come from the lonely hearts of alcoholics everywhere. Keep ever in mind the admission you have made on the day of your entrance into AA, namely, that you are powerless. And it was only with your willingness to turn your life and your will into my keeping that relief came to you. My name is Amanda Brown. I'm a grateful alcoholic. Thank you for letting me share.